Okay, let's dive right into this fascinating explainer by asking a pretty fundamental question about how our world actually works. I mean, we interact with the economy every single day, right? We buy things, we work, we stream media, but behind the scenes, there is this hidden architecture, a blueprint that dictates exactly where everything is going.
So who really decides the future of an economy? Now, you might think it's the millions of everyday workers, or the massive industrial factories, or maybe even the complex tech algorithms running on our phones. But the true steering wheel of a nation actually sits in a highly specialized, remarkably small tier of leadership. We are talking about the absolute top of the pyramid here.
To truly unpack this, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the anatomy of the economy, then define who these decision makers actually are. After that, we'll split the Quaternary and Quinary sectors, trace India's historical evolution, look at the modern landscape, and finally, explore the future of decision-making.
Section 1. Anatomy of the economy, the hierarchy of economic sectors.
Think of the economy as building up almost exactly like the human body, from physical muscle all the way up to the central nervous system. For a long time, we really only talked about the first three steps. Step 1, the primary sector, is the extraction of natural resources, so farming and mining. That's the muscle. Step 2, the secondary sector, manufactures those resources into goods in factories. Step 3, tertiary, provides the services to move and sell those goods, like transport and retail. Step 4, the quaternary sector, is the realm of knowledge, IT, and research. But it's that very top step, the quinary sector, that acts as the absolute brain of the whole operation.
Section 2. Who are the decision makers? Defining the brain of the economy.
So who actually occupies this brain space? Well, the quinary sector represents the absolute highest level of economic activity. We're talking pure decision-making, leadership, policy formulation, and advanced knowledge. It's not about producing a physical good, and it's not about providing a normal day-to-day service. It is entirely about leveraging human intelligence and strategic thinking to shape the direction of an entire society. These are the people who look at the big picture and decide the rules of the game for everybody else.
Let's ground this in everyday life. Take a simple grain of wheat sitting on your dinner table. The farmer in the primary sector grows it. The secondary sector factory turns it into flour. The tertiary transport company gets it to your local grocery store. But look at that final point. The quinary sector is the government policymaker who sets the minimum support price for that wheat. They don't touch the soil, they don't drive the truck, but their single decision dictates the income of millions of farmers and the cost of food for over 1 billion people. That is quinary power in action.
Section 3. The quaternary versus quinary split. Data versus decision.
Now, this brings us to a really common point of confusion, separating the people who gather the knowledge from the people who actually use it. Think of it exactly like a massive ship. On the one side, you have the quaternary sector. This is your data scientist, your researcher. They're the navigator. They look at the radar, crunch the data, and say, hey, there's a huge storm forming 50 miles ahead. They create the knowledge. But on the other side, you have the quinary sector. This is the captain, the policymaker, or the CEO. They take that data and make the strategic decision. We are altering our course 15 degrees to the east. If the quaternary sector is the analyst crunching the economic data, the quinary sector is the minister using that exact data to pass a brand new national law.
Section 4. India's historical evolution, from ancient kings to modern CEOs.
Let's trace how this brain has evolved specifically in India. You can clearly see a massive shift of power over thousands of years here. In ancient India, the quinary sector was occupied by kings and elite advisors. Think of the ancient text, the Arthashastra, which was essentially a masterclass in economic and political decision-making. Then, from 1757 to 1947, colonial officials completely monopolized that decision-making power, effectively stunting local leadership. After independence, government planners stepped in to desperately rebuild the nation through public sector institutions. But the real modern shift? That happened from 1991 onwards. With economic liberalization, the monopoly of the government broke, and suddenly, corporate CEOs, tech founders, and private innovators pulled up a massive seat at the decision-making table.
Section 5. The modern Indian landscape, digital governance and startup leadership.
Today, India's quinary sector is a total digital and entrepreneurial powerhouse. Just look at how incredibly diverse this leadership has become. In government, you have IAS officers and policymakers driving massive digital public infrastructure like Aadhaar and global digital payment systems. But it's definitely not just politicians anymore. In the scientific realm, you have research directors at institutions like ISRO who are literally guiding national missions like Chandrayaan-3 to the moon. And in education, vice chancellors and academic experts are rolling out the National Education Policy 2020, completely overhauling what the next generation will learn. It is a highly multidisciplinary brain.
And you know, the private sector is absolutely exploding into this space too. Over 100,000 recognized startups now exist under the government's Startup India initiative. Why does that matter for the Quinary sector? Because it means tens of thousands of new, young founders are now actively making high-level strategic decisions that influence technology, create massive employment, and shape the daily habits of millions of people. Decision-making is truly, finally, being democratized.
But wait, here is the stark contrast. While the startup ecosystem is booming, India's gross expenditure on research and development remains incredibly low, sitting at around a tiny 0.7% of GDP. That lags significantly behind advanced economies. And the hard truth is, you simply cannot have a world-class brain if you don't feed it with world-class investment in research.
And that lack of investment fuels some pretty major roadblocks. For the Quinary sector to succeed and actually drive the country forward, several challenges have to be met head-on. First, there is often a really narrow concentration of power. Too few people making decisions for way too many, which requires a huge push for transparency. Plus, there's a critical skill gap in emerging fields like artificial intelligence, alongside a persistent digital divide. Think about it. You can't have data-driven decision-making if half the population isn't generating or accessing that data. That ultimately impacts the services and opportunities available to you.
Section 6. Future of Decision-Making, AI and Global Leadership. So if we address those roadblocks, where is the ultimate steering wheel of the economy actually heading between 2025 and 2050? Let's look out at the horizon. Future leaders are going to increasingly rely on big data and predictive analytics as we move fully into a decision economy. Over the next few decades, AI-based decision-making will become totally standard for massive global issues, like managing climate change and healthcare logistics. Because of all this complexity, we're going to see a massive growth in demand for highly specialized policy experts. We are transitioning to an era where economies will rely almost entirely on ideas and innovation over raw physical resources. And crucially, we'll likely see a massive surge in global Indian leadership, with professionals steering major international organizations and global companies. Human intelligence is going to be the most valuable export.
This quote right here perfectly encapsulates everything we've explored today. The primary and secondary sectors, they are the muscle and bone, the physical body of a nation. But the Quinary sector is the brain. It takes the knowledge generated by the quaternary sector and determines exactly how all those raw materials, all those factories, and all those services are actually utilized for society's ultimate progress.
But as we look to the future, it leaves us with a critical, almost unsettling thought to ponder. If the Quinary sector is entirely about high-level human decision-making, what happens tomorrow? When algorithms become so incredibly advanced that they can perfectly predict economic outcomes, climate shifts, and health crises, who will truly be making the final decisions? Will human leaders remain the captains of the ship, or will AI eventually take the wheel? Thank you for exploring the brain of the economy with me.